Hi, everybody. So this summer, I had the pleasure and the opportunity to talk to a number of different people across different school sites about what their fieldwork experience was like, the best ways to onboard and prepare students for working in community settings. And something that came up a lot was this tension between students having a lot of choice and being able to work at a number of different field sites, but also making sure that they had really clear steps and that we were able to build really concrete partnerships with different school sites that could remain consistent and had good communication so that everybody was on the same page and everybody was feeling really supported. And so to develop something that was able to support both of those things, we created a Canvas project site. Now, a project site is a little bit different from a course site because it's not actually connected to a course. But what a project site allows you to do is share this specific site more widely. And the materials that are in a project site can also be imported into a course site. And so today, in a moment, I'll share my screen and I will first preview the homepage of the project site, which does a big picture overview of a number of different resources for instructors. And these are steps and tasks from before the term starts, during the term, and after the term. And it just puts all of these resources together so that if an instructor is thinking, hey, I want to do a class with fieldwork, or I want to revamp my fieldwork course, this is a place where they can go that gives them a timeline of some of the things that they'll want to be thinking about in order to have a fieldwork or have a class with a fieldwork component. Then the second part of this project course site are actual student-facing fieldwork modules. And the intention behind the creation of these student-facing fieldwork modules was for instructors to have something that they could directly import into their course and then modify and update it depending on what sites their students are going to or what particular resources that they might need. And so we'll start today by looking at those, the fieldwork task timeline that really serves the purpose of giving the big picture of what's required for a fieldwork course site. And then the second part is going to be that student-facing module that can live in an instructor's course site and be edited and modified to their needs. The Fieldwork project site overview begins with just instructions of what this Canvas course site contains. And so if I drop down here to the Fieldwork task timeline, you'll see that it's been organized chronologically. The first one being pre-term planning and preparation. And so here, once you click down, you see bullet points that are tasks that an instructor might want to think about. So for example, finalizing site partnerships. And some programs are in really different places in terms of the partnerships that they have. Maybe they've been working with them for years. Some of our courses are creating these partnerships for the first time this summer. And so what we've provided here are a number of clickable links and resources that can help support that process of either creating a partnership for the first time or maintaining partnerships. And so, for example, you have exploring partnerships two-pager. If this gets clicked, then it goes to a document in Google Drive that would be something you could deliver to an after-school program that might be interested in having school volunteers. And so this just serves as a resource that an instructor can then make a copy of and edit it so that it fits what their course requirements are. Some other documents here that we found could potentially be useful is once you have that partnership, it's important to be able to communicate to students, okay, what's going on at this school site? Is this something that you might be interested in? And so we created a partnership information collections sheet. So this is something that an instructor could work on together with the actual field site to get the program information name, the website, the address, different transportation options for students, who's doing the site coordination so that all of this information can live together in a shareable spot so that you really have really good consistent communication between you and that fieldwork site. And something else that could be edited according to your own school schedule is including the academic calendar, because sometimes the field site schedule and the university schedule are not the same. And so again, just a way to make sure that that communication with the site partners is really clear. And other things were a partnership checklist. So if somebody's interested in becoming a site partner, you can click on this and it's got different tasks that that site partner can do to help make their life easier to have school volunteers. Some other steps, preparing independent sites. So something that came out in a lot of interviews is that sometimes students are not able to work at an established site partner, but they already have work in a community setting. And so these are some materials to help streamline that independent sites sign-off process and kind of understanding where that student is coming from, what the nature of their relationship is with that particular community site, and then just making sure that you have communication with whoever that site organization supervisor is. Some other tasks to think about: finalizing fieldwork information in the syllabus, and then preparing a fieldwork module in the Class B course site, which we'll review at the second part of this office hour. Some other steps to think about: in the first week of class, you have introducing students to fieldwork. So this provides instructors some first day slide templates of what information would be really helpful for students to know before signing up and also working in a community setting for the first time. And so here you just have some templates that give that information and then examples from other courses that have already done this work and show how they present this information to their students on their first or second week of class. And then we have here publishing and launching your site-specific fieldwork sign-up sheet. So this varies really according to how the specific class does their site partnership. Sometimes they do have them sign up before they pop in. Sometimes they have them do it after. But just reminding instructors to be really clear about, okay, students, here are the steps to make sure that you can get clearance to work on that site. And then onboarding students to fieldwork. So communicating with field sites about the signups, approving those independent sites, and then responding to and supporting students with any sign-up barriers. Okay, and now as fieldwork begins. So this is really about exploring that practitioner researcher role and making sure that students are prepared for the work that they're going to be doing as practitioner researchers. And so here we have already UC Link's amazing fieldwork video series that's been hyperlinked in here as a resource that students can have to view on their own time, or that can be incorporated into the class. We also have an example template for writing a field note here, and then UC Link specific resources regarding the P12 pre-assessments in class. You have a section about midterm check-in and supports, thinking about what to do as fieldwork concludes. We have an optional hours verification form that can be, again, edited or modified depending on what that course site's requirements are. And then also these UC Link specific resources about the assessments. And then only two more. You have the end of term wrap up. And this is really, again, about making sure communication with those site partnerships is clear. And so we've got two different resources here. In end of term, our site partners are often very, very busy. And so they might not have time to hop into a 30-minute Zoom room to talk about how the process was. And so this is an option to get information from those end of term or at the end of term, asking them, how would you describe the terms partnership, or what aspects worked best? What were the biggest challenges? How effective was the communication between your site and the university? So really just making sure that it's a strong and solid partnership, and that they feel really supported, and that the volunteers that they had were able to, communicate and do the work that they were hoping to get done. Now, if you are able to have a conversation, one of those is in here, end of term conversations. Here we go. So this is a reflection guide. Again, if you have that opportunity to meet with those site partners, where you can ask them questions. So how would you assess the overall partnership? What was the student volunteer experience? What were your feelings on some of the logistics? And how are you thinking about future partnership planning? So just an option, again, to, at the end of the semester, check in with those site partners and see what needs to be changed for the next term. And then you also have a demographic information collection form that's regarding the UC Links report, end of year reports, and then also a reminder here to complete those reports. Gonna pause here and just summarize really quickly. The point of this fieldwork task timeline, again, is to create this kind of big picture overview for instructors of all the different components and parts that are necessary for having a class with a fieldwork component. And within this chronological timeline, live resources that instructors can click on and then edit for their specific course. So again, just trying to provide something at the beginning of the year for instructors to kind of wrap their head around, okay, what's everything that's required for this in order to make sure that I'm having a really solid site partnership and that my students are feeling supported. Okay, so now the second part, importing, editing a fieldwork module template. Some context. I worked as a graduate student instructor here at Berkeley for one of our courses that had a fieldwork component. And something that I found in my work communicating with students is that it was much, much easier if we did this through our actual course site. That's where students are going to find their assignments. That's where students are going for all of their course content. So it just was much easier for us to communicate and house everything in that same place because students had trouble going and finding things if it was sent via email. And so we just felt that putting it all on the course site was really the most efficient way to deliver information to students. And so, with that in mind, this project site has an example of what a fieldwork module might look like. So you can imagine in your course site that you have all of your different modules for your different weekly topics or however your course is organized, but then you also have one that's specific to the actual fieldwork that students are going to be doing. And so this is pretty specific to the Berkeley context because you'll see here at the top, there's a note about when to sign up for your fieldwork site and specific dates. But then these pages, I think, can be applicable for a lot of different contexts, especially because they can be edited and modified. So the first thing that you'll notice is a fieldwork overview. And so this is just a page that's a reminder for students about what is fieldwork. What is the orientation that this particular program or this class is taking to community engaged work? And so this is something that your program's going to have a different definition and a different description, but it's nice to have it live within that course site as a reminder for students of what is entailed in this type of work. We also have a section in here about how to choose a fieldwork site because there is a lot of flexibility around the number of site partnerships that a class might be working with. And so we have some drop-down questions here for students to consider before they're making a commitment to a site where they're going to be spending at least 30 hours a semester. So really being thoughtful about, okay, what is the community partner that I want to work with? So you can see community and impact, practical considerations, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have a note here about preparing for the onboarding process. We found that one of the toughest things for students were the TB tests and the background checks and the live scans. So just being really clear about what this process entails and what kind of hours they're going to want to budget in order to complete all of these onboarding steps. So really just a preview. The next page in the fieldwork module are fieldwork site descriptions. Again, will look different depending on the context, but in this case, we've got some different volunteer sites. They drop down, they can see the different content, and then an option for independent sites here too. And there's nothing listed in here because this is just a template. And then down here, there's a brief summary of what that sign-up process looks like. On the next page, and there are different pages for each one of these site names, are the steps for actually what that onboarding process looks like. So here, students could navigate to their B course site and see the list of instructions for exactly how they need to sign up and get permission and get clearance to go to the site. So here you can hyperlink the school sign-up sheet if it has one, and you can add the rest of the steps according to that site's requirement so that students can always go here, sign up, and know where their steps are for them to get clearance. And this is also a great place to put that contact information. So if students are having questions or they're experiencing those barriers, you can be really specific in this section about, okay, here's the contact or here's the name of the person that you're going to want to contact for these specific difficulties. And then steps to sign up for independent sites. These are the sites that might not be a specific site partnership, but ones that students have previous relationships with. And so here's an opportunity for listing the steps of how you might want to go about streamlining that process and making sure you have that information and that connection with that field site coordinator. The next section addresses something else that came up in a lot of interviews that I had this summer, which is students are hit with a lot of information at the very beginning of the year around how do I sign up? How do I choose a site partner? But then there are all these different challenges that they're going to face in the moment about how do I build rapport with a student or how do I get them motivated to explore this or I'm not even quite sure how to read with a student, and that's what I'm doing. I'm engaged in an after-school program where I'm reading books with a 7-year-old, and this is new for me. And so the intention and the thought behind this section was that you could have resources for working with youth. And you can categorize these in any kind of way that feels best suited for, again, the kind of work that you do in your program. In this case, we have it according to Fieldwork and the Fieldwork video series. So, really thinking about what it means to pitch in and participate, teacher researchers, participant observer. Then we have a section, mentorship and program facilitation, and this was cultivated from the UC Links network. And Math CEO, Project Reach had so many great resources already about mentoring and making learning more playful. And so these were just hyperlinked resources for students to take advantage of. Then you can have a section about targeted academic resources. Perhaps your class is one that's only supporting math. So here you could put in a number of resources about how to tutor math. And then we have another section here about trauma-informed resources that can be available for students to go in just in time if they're having, their fourth week of field work and they have a question about how to handle a particular situation. This is somewhere where they could go to look through these resources and see if there's something that can answer their questions. Another thing that came up were professionalism expectations. For some of the undergraduates, this is kind of their first professional opportunity. And so there was a need, we heard, to support students in how to show up at a community partner site. And so here you've got some expectations where you flip the cards around and it gives a little bit more information. And then also communicating with fieldwork sites. So tips for writing an email and actually providing an email example for students to just copy and paste and feel really confident about communicating with their field sites. And also just keeping in mind that organizations that work with kids are busy and that it can take a few emails to get a response, and that you want to believe the best and extend compassion in your communication with your field sites. And then, of course, linking the UC Links digital resource card in here as well. The next page is about reimbursement information. So this is going to vary according to class and context. And so you can import this page and then describe your reimbursement policies and your reimbursement process. And then a section on frequently asked questions. So recognizing and validating that signing up, onboarding, and starting fieldwork can be a complex process. And then having various tabs here for students to go and see what are some of the common questions that they might not have caught going through the fieldwork module. So the categories that we have here, and just some ideas, are signing up for a fieldwork site, doing the onboarding process, transportation questions, how do you submit a field note, what happens if your school's on spring break and you didn't get a chance to volunteer and you have a field note due, reimbursement questions, and then a specific page for contact information given the exact or particular challenge that the student is facing. And I think that is the last page in this one. So here's the example hours verification form. So that's something else that I heard from many folks in interviews, is that having some of these things positioned as site assignments in B courses can also be really helpful. So this is just an example of an hours verification form that students can download and then turn in as an assignment. But I also heard other instructors that actually had an assignment that said, check this box once you finish your onboarding process. So just finding a way to get this whole process to live in B courses can be really helpful for students to have a hub of resources to go to for whatever challenges they're facing or whatever steps that they need to take for this process. The next thing that I just popped into the chat actually has all of the information that was contained in the student-facing fieldwork module. So the first one was just a timeline. This next document you'll see has an overview or an outline of those specific student-facing fieldwork module pages. Because I wanted you to be able to have access to the text, you're going to see that it looks a little bit different in how it was designed. This is just the simple text version. So you're not going to have those drop-down menus because I couldn't make drop-down menus in a PDF, very sadly. But you'll see that it has the same titles, same subtitles. And so for that section, for example, how to choose your fieldwork site, again, it doesn't have those drop-down menus, but it does have those exact same questions that were captured in the design one that I showed you. The next thing that I'm going to put in there are the directions for importing the project site. And John, I think you made this because I was exploring in our drive, and I definitely did not make this document, but it was beautiful. Was that you?
Oh, yeah, that was me.
Great. Thank you for that. So here is the Fieldwork project site import instructions. This one. Yeah?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So those are instructions for how to import the Canvas module. The previous one, I believe, should have the link for the import for the entire project site. So that would give you the timeline for instructors as well as those two different modules. Now, we had a request from James over at UCSD that instead of the entire project site, they just wanted the imports for the modules. So these should be that.
Oh, maybe it's worth highlighting. I'll share my screen super quick. Uh, Once you have access, just to see it in the recording as well. Um, this is when you open the file from the Google Drive directly, it'll show you this screen. And basically, all you have to do is go in directly here in the download section where this red arrow is pointing at to download the IMSCC file. And that's the one that will be imported into your Canvas course.
And we've had folks try this at UCSD and they were able to upload, even though it came from a project site, they were able to upload it directly into a course site. And then I think it was UCI, they uploaded it from a project site to a project site, but because they didn't have City Labs, it didn't look the exact same with the drop-down menus, whereas at UCSD it did. So just calling that out again, if it looks different, it could just be access to that extra tool. And if you do have it on the project site where it talks about editing and importing a template, it also gives instructions for how to get access to that tool because there's just a special shortcut that you press and then ta-da, it's there. And it can be a learning curve to figure out how to use it, but pretty fun. Any questions about the fieldwork task timeline or the documents that are available here?
I have a program specific question. What are the requirements, the fieldwork requirements for the students? Like what's the length or
Hmm. So that is specific to the class, which was part of the project and having
Hmm.
these interviews with folks is when you say field work, when you use the term practitioner researcher, what does that mean? And so really coming to a shared definition was a part of this work. And I think something that we're continuing to have conversations in our own undergraduate field work, our own undergraduate major committee. In terms of courses, requirements and units, my understanding is that it's 30 hours of fieldwork a semester equals 1 unit of fieldwork. So they have to be at their school site for 30 hours over the course of the semester in order to receive that 1 unit of fieldwork.
hmm.
And so the major itself says you need to take these classes. Some of these classes have a required fieldwork component, and then the expectation is that you are doing fieldwork for that many hours as is dictated by the particular class. So it's different than other UC models and other UC education majors or whatever programs they are, but that's how it is currently functioning at Berkeley.
Awesome. Thank you.
This is so important, so well put together. I just it helps so much because I was doing basically like a field site coordinator
Mm-hmm.
last semester, and the professors don't have anything like this, and this would be so great to have. So thank you for all the work that you've put into doing this because I really think that it answers so many of the questions that so many of the undergrads have when they're going for the first time to do this work. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Carla. Yeah, it's tough. You're doing so much. The kids are figuring out how to onboard. Sometimes it's their very first professional experience that I've heard from folks, and then they're really invested in helping the kids. And they're like, but wait, how do I sign up for a live scan? And I think just having it living in one place seemed to be helpful. But I'm really looking forward to getting undergraduate feedback this semester because this is the first opportunity that instructors have had to use something like this. But adjustments can be made once we find out from undergraduates about what was helpful or what was overwhelming or underwhelming about this kind of way to provide information.